Get the we will get things going. Oops, I will hit OK. And it's good to see you all. Happy convention season to the Episcopal Diocese of Arizona. I'm incredibly grateful to all of you for taking the time to be here, and I am grateful to our staff for making this possible, especially tonight for Laurel, who's managing all of the Zoom. We're going to start with a prayer. So, the Lord be with you. Let us pray. O God, you made us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love. And work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth, that in your good time all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So tonight is the night that we will go through everything that is a resolution at convention. So that includes our financial statement of mission, our proposed constitutional and canonical changes, and the sort of more general resolutions. You'll have a chance to learn about all of them, to ask questions about all of them. And so we do ask you to keep yourself on mute during the presentation. And then if you have a question, either raise your hand using the raise hand feature down at the bottom, or put your question in the chat. Because there are too many people on this Zoom for us to see if you just happen to be raising your hand physically. We won't necessarily see you. But look forward to your questions and to the conversation about this. I am going to turn it over now to the diocesan treasurer, who is, by far one of the hardest working and one of my favorite people in the whole world, Susie Mortensen, for the presentation about the 2026 financial statement of mission.
Well, goodness. Thank you, Bishop Rattle. I think Kevin will disagree that I'm the hardest working since adiosed for a couple of weeks during the final throes of getting this done and was out on a boat in the Atlantic somewhere. So, but thank you very much for that introduction. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight as we go through this first portion of the Diocesan Convention, the 2026 proposed statement of mission. Tonight, I'm going to walk through some of the highlights of the 2026 statement of mission. And as delegates to the convention, you will be asked to vote on this proposed statement of mission during the convention, I believe on the 11th of October. So you should have received an advance copy of the proposed statement of mission via email in mid-September. And I always like to say this, and we call it a statement of mission because we want to develop a spending plan that supports the mission and ministry of the diocese. So we think it's important that we refer to this not just as a budget, although you will hear me say budget frequently tonight. Because that's my background. But again, this is the way that we plan to support the mission and ministry of the diocese. Okay, going on to the first slide. There we go. Yay! So I want to let you know I want to walk through how we put this together. We start this process in July. The Director of Finance and Operations, Kevin Lentz, reaches out to key program leaders, the diocesan staff, and of course to Bishop Jennifer. Bishop Jennifer shares her vision of the direction of the diocese as well as the needs of the congregation and our various ministries. And next slide. So we review our revenue trends, particularly as it relates to mission share. And Kevin, the Director of Finance, develops the diocesan portion of the plan and incorporates the ministry and program estimates from diocesan staff and key program leaders. So we really do try to make this a collaborative effort. We want to hear the desires and the programs that people are wanting to incorporate, and so we build all of that in by speaking out and reaching out to the ministry leaders in the diocese. And next one. So the draft is reviewed with myself, the diocesan treasurer, with Bishop Jennifer, with Bishop Jennifer, and we make adjustments, we fine tune things, and of course our goal is to have a balanced plan. And next one. So the twitch in my eye. So after we have the best version possible, we submit it to the finance committee. And click. And the finance committee approved the statement of mission on September 11th. Then it goes to the standing committee, and the standing committee approved that on September 18th. And finally, it goes to you, the delegates of the convention. And when we don't know what that vote will be yet, but so we are hoping that it will come out positive and you will approve this this proposal. Okay, then how we have formed how we formed this is we have key objectives in mind. We want to continue to support our congregations and the goals of the diocese as outlined by the standing committee. We want to adequately support clergy and staff with reasonable wages and benefits. And of course, we want to continue to support the ministries, the vital ministries that exist in our diocese. And from a staffing level, because that's one of the biggest portions of our budget for our diocesan clergy staff, well, actually, all staff received an increase of 3%. This is in line with the Consumer Price Index for this past year. For diocesan clergy, we hired a canon for intergenerational ministry in June of 2025, Caitlin McAllister. And the canon for border ministry and the canon for Native American ministries, these are both clergy positions, and the canon for Black ministry, and this is a lay position, these have been combined into one full-time lay staff position, canon for justice. And as we know from the email that went out earlier today, the canon for justice is responsible for more than just border ministry, Black ministry, and Native American ministries. This person will also serve as liaison for a number of our other ministries, such as LGBTQ+, veterans, creation care, etc. As for the diocesan lay staff, we added a full-time position, as I just mentioned, for the canon for justice. All right. So here we go, getting into the nitty-gritty of all of the numbers, always my favorite part. And one thing I want to point out to you also, based on feedback in prior years, we're comparing our proposed 2026 numbers to a projected 2025 number. So previously, in years past, have you been, Laurel, can you back up one, please?
Laurel, it's forward, not back.
Oh, she's getting there. There we go. Okay, so what we've done in previous years is compare the 2026 plan to the 2025 plan. This year, a more meaningful number is to look at the projected 2025 actual to where we think we'll be in 2026 for our budget. So revenue, we're projecting revenue to be almost $4 million. This is an increase of $94,000 from 2025. Most notably, mission share is projected to be 2.8 million. That's the biggest portion of our revenue. 2025 is also projected to be 2.8 million, so we're holding it steady year over year, and the mission share percentage will stay at 16.9%. Restricted and reserved funds, this is a combination of two things. These are the restricted funds that are donor restricted or board restricted. These are funds donated for outreach and mission used to fund our current year's planned expenditures. That's a decrease of about 18,000 year over year. In the Alleluia Fund and the Neely Fund, we use Alleluia funds to support new churches. These funds, we've been talking about this for a year, that these funds are diminishing, and it's finally here. These funds are projected to run out in early 2026. And we also have a little bit of Neely funds left. We're going to use those funds to support new ministry, specifically our intergenerational ministry, and we'll continue for 2 years to support intergenerational ministry with the remaining Neely funds. So the net increase overall in the restricted fund support is almost $2,000. Okay, now we're ready. The other source of revenue we classify as other income. That's projected to be about 803,000 in 2026 compared to a 711,000 in 25, an overall increase of 92,000. And I'll touch on a couple of these bigger ones here. Under retreat, camp, and other event registry revenue, uh, we've we have added a number of things under the intergenerational category. It's particularly an intergenerational retreat, a Province 8 youth retreat, and Camp for Adults. Now, I know many of you are familiar with Camp for Adults and that we have it every year, but this year we are running the income and expense for Camp for Adults in the diocese, since we are managing that more intentionally at the diocesan level. So that accounts for an increase of 50,000 year over year. In addition, we are drawing about our draw from our endowment funds are going to increase by 50,000 to a total draw of 290,000. We are still using a formula to draw those endowment funds. The formula is based on the average of the past 3 years of our endowment funds, and the percentage we're drawing is 7.5%. And that's a little bit high, but it's not, I don't think, extraordinarily high, but our goal is to get this lower over the next year or so. And then in grants, we're going to jump up a little bit here on the slide. We're showing a decrease of 25,000 year over year. We have been notified that we are a recipient of a grant from a charitable trust, but we are not projecting any grants from the Episcopal Church in 2026. Those grants may be available, and if they are appropriate, we will apply for those. And so this may turn out better than what we're projecting. But again, the net increase in other income overall is about 92,000. Okay. And this is how it looks in my colorful pie chart. Again, revenue is projected to be 4 million. Roughly, mission share makes up 70% of that. Restricted funds account for about 9.7%. The endowment draw is 7.3%. And then we have other revenue of 5%, fees and repayments of 4%, and revenue from our retreats, camps, and leadership events at about 3.5%. Great. Moving on to expenditures. Expenditures are also projected to be almost $4 million, and also an increase of 94,000 from our 2025 plan. This is our biggest category of an array of different categories, and that's the ministries and programs. Intergenerational ministry, again, this is new this year. It's replacement of some in a combination of a number of other ministries, all under intergenerational. That increase year over year is expected to be 57,000 because, again, of the intergenerational camp, the Province 8 youth gathering, and the adult camp. In adult education and events in 2026, this expense is going to include monastic retreats, discipleship days, and the clergy retreats. And we're expecting cost increases for each of these events, so that's an increase of about 17,500. Jumping down to the Native American ministry decrease, we're projecting a decrease of $10,400. In 2025, our projected actual included production costs for the listening and healing documentary. We're not going to have that expense in 2026, so that will be we're projecting lower costs next year. And finally, overall, again, the net increase is going to be 72,000 for these various items. All right, going on to the next page. In the area of compensation, I'm going to talk about clergy compensation first. That is, and our proposed compensation for clergy in 2026 is at 568,000 compared to 590,000 in 2025. This is a decrease of 21,600. The biggest change is the new position established for the intergenerational ministry. In 2025, we filled this position in June with the Reverend, thanks to Reverend Caitlin McAllister answering that call. So that's an increase year over year of 50,000. And as I mentioned previously, the border ministry and the border minister and the Native American minister these positions have been combined into the one lay position, canon for justice. That represents a decrease in clergy compensation of about $95,500. And the remaining increase is due to the 3% salary increase and the traditional increases in the cost of health insurance. And moving on to diocesan staff compensation, we're projecting $849,000 for 2026, an increase of about $103,700. As I've mentioned numerous times already tonight, the new canon for justice position was added. This is a full-time position. And it also includes the reduction for Black ministry, which had been a part-time position, because that's now incorporated in the canon for justice. And it also includes, this increase also includes the staff increase overall of 3%. So that's an increase in staff in compensation of $80,500. And then the benefits and taxes, our canon for justice is a full-time position. And so that warrants health insurance, and that probably makes up about half of the $23,000 increase in benefits and taxes. The rest of it is going to be the 3% increase and the overall cost in health insurance. Altogether, the combined compensation for and benefits for clergy staff and clergy and diocesan staff is an overall increase of $81,500. All right, moving on to the next line. Our operating expenses are projected to decrease by about $43,000. The biggest portion of that is a decrease in audit support fees for 2026. We're projecting a decrease of about $39,000 year over year. This is kind of good news that this is going down. This means that we are getting all things financial in order relative to what has to happen for having a qualified, a truly GAAP audit. So an audit that is based on generally accepted accounting principles. We haven't always incorporated all the generally accepted accounting principles that we should, and so we are up to speed on most of that, and we are doing much better relative to being able to produce financial statements that make a lot of sense, and I'm glad that we are at this point. In the line of governance and polity, that's a slight increase year over year, about $4,800. The biggest number in here is the Episcopal Church assessment. So just as our congregations are submitting mission share to us and based on an assessment of their operating revenue, we in turn as the diocese pay an assessment to the Episcopal to the Episcopal Church, and it is based on a portion of our 2024 operating revenue. And this year's calculation resulted in an assessment of $380,000, whereas in 2025 we had an assessment of $368,000. And the other item of note here is the diocesan convention for 2026 is expected to be about $8,000 less than this year's convention, because this year's convention is a 2-year convention, and in 2026 we are planning to have just a 1-day convention. Excuse me. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is getting to be like the last page of numbers, so everybody can rejoice. Supportive mission in our congregations is projected to be almost $858,000 in 2026. This is an increase of $85,000 over 2025 projected. So there's varying degrees of support that we provide for 16 missions in the cathedral, and the majority of this increase is based on increases in salary and in benefits that were across the board for everybody. There's a few instances where, because we're looking at projected 2025, we have some rural churches that we were striving to get consistent clergy support for some of these churches, for some of our rural churches, and we weren't always successful. So that number is coming in a little bit lower for 2025 actual, but we're hopeful that that's all going to come to fruition in 2026. That also contributes to part of this overall increase. And finally, in our donor restricted funds, as I've mentioned, the Alleluia funds are running out in 2026, decreasing our ability to support new churches, and that is a decrease year over year of $93,000. And then back to the fun part on our next slide. the pictures with lots of colors. This kind of breaks out where we're at. For our total spend, we project to spend about 54% of their entire operating budget on support of congregations, communities, and ministries. Operating expense will be about 11%. I use two wedges, pie wedges for both diocesan clergy and for diocesan support. So if you see the diocesan clergy staff in the yellow of 10.5% and diocesan clergy supporting ministries in the purple of 3.7%, that combines to a total of 14.2%. I find it helpful to sort of separate those two because we do have clergy who are dedicated 100% of their salary is going towards support of ministries. That includes the canon for justice and the canon for intergenerational ministry and the canon for Hispanic ministry. And the same with diocesan staff. There's the green wedge and the orange wedge. Those two add up together to 21.3%. Diocesan staff supporting ministry includes summer camp manager and the canon for justice, and the diocesan support staff is everybody else who keeps the wheels turning at the diocese. So going on to the next pie chart, and keeping in mind that big blue chunk there, that 54%, this is what this breaks down to. This is that and the clergy who are supporting ministry. That total adds up to $2,408,000 of our operating expense, or 60.4% of our total revenue. And again, you can see the biggest chunk there is mission in our congregations for about 35.6%, supporting the greater church, intergenerational ministry at 12%, justice ministries at 9%, campus ministries at 12.5%, and probably that's most near and dear to your hearts, maybe. The mission share rebate amount is in there at 6.7%. And just as a reminder, mission share rebate is calculated at 1% of the operating income that you use to report your mission share to us. And finally, new churches at 2.6%. All right. That's it. Any questions?
So Susie, take a sip of water. Thank you for the presentation. And so there are questions in the chat about our total endowment. How much money is in our endowment? And then I would add to that, how much money is in our restricted funds, because that's another chunk of that.
All right, I was ready for the endowment. So that is nowhere on my desk very quickly. So the endowment funds are at about, I would say, okay, I can do this. They're at about $4 million. That includes the permanently restricted portion and the earnings on the endowment. So probably about 4.2 million, and another probably 1.2 million is in the restricted funds. And that includes a number of things such as the ESC, like the Episcopal Community Services Foundation, legacy grants. Those are funds that are in there. That's a big chunk of it. That's the one that comes to mind, but there's a number of smaller amounts in there that are specifically designated towards various ministries, such as Native American ministry, veterans ministry. There's just little pots of money throughout there. We also have a campership fund of about $35,000. So all of those various things, as you can, by the way I'm saying them and the titles I'm giving them, you know that those are funds that are specifically donor restricted. And then a few things are board restricted. Does that help?
Yeah. And there was a question about trends of endowment use. Are we using more of the endowment now or less of the endowment now over time?
It depends on how far back you go. But over the past, I would say 4 or 5 years, we are using less of our endowment. There were a couple of years in the past 4 or 5 years where we were withdrawing $400,000 a year. That was definitely too much. As part of this whole audit process and understanding of everything that we have and everything that is in our investment funds, et cetera, we have a much clearer picture of what is what. And this is where we are now able to really look and make the calculations for drawing based on a pretty recognized method of looking at the average over a period of years. 3 years is usually good enough, and limiting it to a percentage draw of year over year.
And I will add, so obviously we are overdrawing our endowment. We can't do that forever. One of the things that you'll hear me talk about in my address to convention is that I had a mutual ministry review with the diocese this past year in which a facilitator came in and did surveys of some diocesan leaders and spoke to other diocesan leaders and did interviews. And my intent, it was with the standing committee, we just received that a couple weeks ago, is to use that as the guidelines for spending the next year doing some strategic planning with the standing committee to get us where we need to be financially and also planning for the long term. Our diocese is a diocese, like many dioceses in the West, where our entire diocesan budget essentially is for mission share, right? Like we have an endowment, but it's not a big one. There are dioceses in the Episcopal Church that get like 50% of their income from endowed funds. Where that's not us. And we don't necessarily need it to be us, but working on how do we find alternate sources of income so that we're not entirely dependent on mission share in the way that we are. There is a question about who serves on the finance committee. Do you think we can come up with that list on the top of our heads, Susie? It's Susie, me, Canon Anita, um, Larry Erickson, representing the investment committee, um, John Collins, not John Caleb Collins, but his father, John Collins. Um, who am I missing?
Ernie Stuckey
Ernie
from Trinity
Stuckey.
Cathedral, and Kyle Kim Hayes from St. Philip's in the Hills.
There we go. Um, and then what is the percentage of assessment that Diocese of Arizona pays to, it's tech now, not ACUSA, but do we pay 15% to the Episcopal Church? There is talk at General Convention about reducing the assessment to the Episcopal Church from diocese. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. If it happens, I think that would be a reason for us to look at reassessing our a mission share formula for congregations, so that we were passing that on to congregations. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not. We also question if we overdraw it is really endowment. Um, I, James, we agree a draw of 4% would be ideal. I concur. How conservative or aggressive are the revenue and expense assumptions, i.e., what is the margin of error if actuals deviate?
I haven't thought of it in that way, but I think I think we do a pretty good job of trying to nail this, based, particularly since like 60+% of our budget is salary and wages, and so those are pretty fixed. We know what those are going to be. So the rest of it is, with input from the various ministries and our operating expenses. We do a really close look at our operating expenses, and I'm happy to say that our budget to actual for operating expenses is pretty darn close. It's a little bit over. Our operating expenses are a little bit over relative to the audit fees that we have right now, because we do have a continuous audit going on, and we are mentioned. As I mentioned, we do have some audit support fees in there, so it's a little over budget for that for 2025. But I think pretty much will be close to. We think we'll be there for 26 for the operating expense, and that's one of the things that ends up driving the revenue too.
Other questions? You can raise your hand if you want to raise your hand, or put them in the chat. That seems to be working pretty well. All right, well then, Susie, thank you. You have survived phase 1 of the budget presentation for Diocesan Convention 2025. Thank you, as always, for everything you do. And, working with Susie is a joy. The woman, I mean, she lives in Oro Valley now, but she kind of lives in Dio House. She's here a lot and is incredibly dedicated, and we're incredibly grateful to her for her oversight and wisdom.
Thank you.
Next up, I am going to introduce Ben Guerin, who is the chair of the Resolutions Committee, to take us through first some Wait, we have one more question. Numerical increase and decrease of diocesan personnel for 20, I think you mean 2026. So two shifts happened basically in 2025. The first was when Jana left diocesan staff. She was on our staff. I think she was at like 60% or something. She wasn't full time, but she was
Right.
60% time, and spoke to the standing committee about um, how we wanted to deal with youth and young adult ministry in and children's and youth ministry in the Diocese of Arizona. And the standing committee said that they thought that it was worth using some of the reserve funds, the Neely funds, to make that a full-time position rather than a part-time position, and also to, in context with thinking through like sort of like where formation ministry is in the Episcopal Church today, to make that the canon for intergenerational ministry as opposed to specifically being a children and youth ministry, because we need to be able to do formation across all ages in all of our congregations, right? We have some congregations that have really active and great children's programs and youth programs, and adult programs, and that's great. We also have a lot of programs where we have congregations where we have no children, except sometimes you do. And so trying to figure out how to serve that is the work that is part of the work that Caitlin is doing, while also taking a full engagement in the children youth ministry. Um, so that we did that and filled that position, and Caitlin is off and running and has been in a lot of your churches on Sunday mornings, preaching and presiding and teaching. So we're great to have that off. And then the second shift was with a few things happening at once. I explained this in the announcement that went out earlier this week. So the first thing that happened was Canon Debbie Royals is retiring, and you know, good for her. We wish her well. And that's a quarter time position, the canon for Native ministry position. And the other thing that happens is that border ministry has shifted, right? JJ Bernal has done great work in our diocese, helping our shelter and helping asylum seekers who are coming to the United States. There isn't an asylum process right now. Our shelter, La Casa de Misericordia, that we work with Cruzando Fronteras, is still open. They're sort of figuring out what their ministry is, if it's going to be a ministry of people who are just staying there, if it's a ministry of people who are self-deporting and we're using it as a place for people to stay for a few days. But that ministry does not require a half-time staff position to be on the staff with it. Um, Also, Canon Alex was doing phenomenal work as the canon for Black ministry and really wanted to see if that work could be rewarded and expanded. And the other thing that's happening is that justice work is really important in 2025, and it will be in 2026 as well. And there are justice ministries that right now we have that are good and doing good work, but because there is not a designated staff member for them to reach out to and report to, what happens is they reach out to whoever their favorite person on staff is. So often that will be, sometimes that's me, sometimes that's Laurel, sometimes that's Serena, sometimes that's Anita, but none of us have the right kind of bandwidth to give it the attention it needs. And so this way, Canon Alex, in moving and being promoted into the full-time position, will be able to help and respond to all of those and continue her ministry with Black ministry and respond to whatever justice issues come up in 2026 that I haven't thought of yet. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be some. So I'm really grateful to her for being able to step into that. And so the other thing that does that makes my life easier as a supervisor is it takes 3 people who report to me and makes it 1 person who reports to me. Which is also an easier thing in my world of managing my time and my staff. Um, David Muil, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your last name. You said you're waving your hand. Can I ask a question? So wherever you are, unmute yourself, and yes, you can ask a question.
I'm here, and
Okay.
my name is Moo Ye, like a cow and a cheerleader. Moo Ye.
Thank you.
Um, and I have more of a remark than a question. We all know that we put our money into things that are most valuable to us. And there are certain ministries in our diocese that are extremely important. One of them is Sport for Clergy, the campus ministry, the Black ministry, Native American ministry, Hispanic and Latino ministry, and as you mentioned, social justice, which is going to become, it seems to me, yet more important. And I'm hoping that we can find a way to increase our funding in those ministries so that it becomes obvious that these things are extremely valuable to us. And in essence, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. That we're going to say that this is important, but we're also going to increase the strength of these programs so that they do have an impact on the world around us. I'm done.
Thank you, David. All right, that's an excellent comment. Now shifting to Ben Guerin, the chair of the Resolutions Committee, to take us through some resolutions that are dull, some resolutions that might be interesting, and some resolutions that we may have want to have conversation about. Ben.
So yes, Laurel, I believe that you can help with getting a screen share that has these resolutions on it. Thank you very much. To begin with, just a note that there is a set that is going to be Constitution Resolutions A and Constitution Resolutions B at the very end of the resolution process. And the reason for that is somewhat clear when we get to the final resolution, would be changing the quorum size of the diocesan convention. And if we do that midship and rebuild the size of the convention and change the constitution in the middle of the event, it can be considered that we have to sort of restart many things with a new quorum. So we're going to delay passing that bit of old business to the very end. So just a precursor warning as why there is two sets of canon resolutions. So canon resolutions, we have passed all of these at the previous diocesan convention. So these resolutions have already passed one diocesan convention. This is their second reading. When and if they pass this time around, they will become part of our Constitution. So Resolution 2024.1, amend Constitution to no longer reference diocesan council. This is the second reading. This is a very boring resolution. We are removing references to the Diocesan Council, which merged with the Standing Committee almost a decade ago now, and there are just a few errata left in the Constitution that still reference the Diocesan Council. The next one is 2024.2, amend Article 5, Section 3, second reading. This one is simply changing a he to a they, and that's a gender neutral single use of the term they, simply to clarify that the bishop may be male, may be female, may be other. So nothing again particular there. Our next resolution does have a very small amount of teeth. 2024.3, amend Article 5, Section 5A, second reading, that to elect the bishop of the diocese to elect a coadjutor and to elect one or two suffragan bishops without right of succession. So in this case, it is just we are limited to two suffragan bishops instead of as many as might otherwise be needed. Are there any questions to these constitutional resolutions? Tim, there was another section where we did do that. That is correct. I believe that this is one where we kept the they. But I can double check that from what was passed. We can double check that preemptive to convention. So thank you. What is a suffragan bishop? A suffragan bishop is a sort of the equivalent to an assistant to the rector in a parish, but on a diocesan level. For a very quick and limited to, I I believe it's because I don't think we've ever had one in the diocese.
You almost had one briefly. You had one briefly, but yeah, we're unlikely to have a suffragan bishop anytime in my tenure, unless someone dies and leaves us an enormous pot of money. I think it's unlikely we'll have one, much less two. But now we can only have two.
And David Bennett Hedges I will unmute you. Or try to. There we go.
Thank you. The church-wide canons have stated for quite some time that dioceses may elect up to 2 suffragan bishops. At last year's General Convention, there was a proposal to increase it to 3, and I cannot remember if it passed or not, but the Diocese of Texas, having absorbed the former Diocese of Fort Worth, felt the need for a 3rd suffragan bishop to have oversight of the former Diocese of Fort Worth and help them grow and recover, but I can't remember if we passed that or not. That is all.
So in the questions about did we amend they to be the bishop, I remember that conversation as well. I wonder if it was had over canon resolutions rather than constitutional resolutions, because we did have a different set of them. But we can go back and look at our minutes and double check that. I do appreciate that either way, we will no longer in our constitution assume that the bishop is male.
Moving on to our next set of resolutions, which are a canon change resolution. Canon resolutions must pass by a majority vote in both orders. They only need to pass at one convention. And so resolution 2025.01, amend Canon 1, Section 4B. So this has some potential conversation points. It's not so this one basically it changes us from using membership as the primary way of noting the number of delegates to convention and moves it to average Sunday attendance. To speak more clearly about this, as this is a resolution with teeth, if Canon Erica or Brother David would like to speak to the considerations and thoughts behind this resolution.
Bishop, was Stanley James going to speak?
Stanley here. We had a meeting with Stanley earlier today. Stanley, you want to unmute yourself? If you're here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You're asking me to talk, well, you can read it. What we've done is what's being done with this is that we're moving to a different way to apportion the lay delegates to the convention. So before, I think we were doing it on the basis of what the report was on what the membership is. Now we're saying that it would be simpler and probably more accurate to talk about it in terms of, we would say, if a congregation has about anywhere from 1 to 75 people in attendance on any given Sunday, or on average, then they would receive 1 delegate. If they had 76 to 150 people attending, they would have 2 delegates, and 3 delegates for 151 or more people in attendance at the Sunday services. What this means is that every congregation theoretically should have 3, at the very least 3 delegates, both the senior and junior warden and then the one delegate if their membership is, if their attendance is from 1 to 75. There's a number of reasons for doing this. One is if we have large numbers of members, it's very difficult for us to seat everybody comfortably to have our convention meetings. So we need to recognize that we're not going to be, we are not in a financial position to have our annual conventions at a hotel every single year. The churches don't want to support that, and we can't support it as a diocese. So we need to be prudent about how many members, how many representatives come to the diocesan convention. Let's see. We think that this still allows for the convention to be accessible, but as importantly, it also allows for this to be affordable for all of the churches in the diocese. I don't know if there's questions that people have to ask me at this point, but
we have a couple questions in the chat, some of which I can answer.
Okay.
So what we did was we heard comments from last year, and the Constitution and Canons Committee reconvened and took the feedback. And we heard last year that there was concern about wanting to make sure that wardens were delegates. So we left the canon as it currently is about wardens. So the part that's in black there hasn't been changed, which is the part about the wardens. We also heard that there was a desire to make sure that small congregations didn't lose some of their voice. So we made sure that there were still 3 delegates from the smaller congregations. The congregations that would lose delegates and representation are the sort of medium to larger sized congregations. The total delegate count shift would be somewhere in the nature of, we think, about 70 delegates. It depends on how big the congregations are. This would give us some room to grow. And it would also mean that we still have lay delegates to clergy delegates at about a 2-to-1 ratio. So there'd still be almost 2 lay delegates to every clergy delegate giving, so we'd end up with somewhere in the nature of low 300s for the total clergy and lay delegates together, instead of where we are today, which is in the sort of upper 300s, which is what's making it hard for us to accommodate that within our congregations. I see questions about average weekly attendance versus Sunday attendance. Average Sunday attendance is a statistic the Episcopal Church has been keeping for decades and decades. Average weekly attendance, I think we do have in the parochial report now. Those of you who filled out a parochial report more recently than me would know that. We could use average weekly attendance, but for some of our congregations, that would be very strange, because if you have, say, for instance, the daily office or daily mass, you might have an average Sunday attendance of 50, but if you've got 10 of those people coming to worship, every day that week, that's a not necessarily a standard of size. But I'm open to amendments from the floor on this. Again, Tim Highland, about limiting the number of lay delegates. I think that's the same. We can amend that, because I see we did take out some of that language. And average Sunday attendance is determined by the statistics that get reported to the parochial report. So we have a question about snowbirds. So again, it's attendance based. So if you're a snowbird and you're there for half of the year, that counts as in the average attendance. Okay, we have comments on that. And a question about virtual attendance for convention. In the survey we did of convention delegates last summer, there was a number of 2/3 of the respondents preferred the in-person business meeting, and only 1/3 preferred the online business meeting. So it seemed like there was a strong desire to make sure that we were still doing this in person rather than doing at least the business meeting online. And Scott, uh, I see your potential amendment, and we can discuss that at convention. We've done the math on this to make sure that this allows us to make sure that we think to make conventional accessible to all the delegates in our congregations. But the convention will do as it sees fit as we continue. So clergy voters right now are clergy, in order to have voice and vote as clergy, it's actually quite strict in the Diocese of Arizona. You have to be physically and canonically resident in the Diocese of Arizona, and you have to be active in ministry. So if you are a clergy person in the Diocese of Arizona who's canonically resident here but does not have an active ministry, you don't have voice and vote in convention. And I don't think there's any way that we can tighten up clergy voters if clergy are both canonically resident and active, and take away their vote. Other
Wilson
questions?
has his hand.
Yeah.
Carter Wilson has his hand raised.
Okay, Carter.
Sorry, my camera's not working, but it appears to me that the intent is that these lay delegates in the red are in addition to the wardens. And it seems to me that it should read additional lay delegates shall be apportioned.
Okay.
But that's just the way. It's not clear to me that the red portion doesn't include the wardens with that, which would lower the number of delegates.
Yeah. I mean, again, we used some of the language from the canons initially, but it may be that our original canonical language was not that clear, and we should clear that up.
Would you like to respond to that?
Laurel, I think I did respond to Carter's question.
Yes.
Sorry, I see David's hand.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I can't see hands. So
Thank you. David Benedict Hedges, St. Michael's, Tucson. The inclusion of the wardens is in language that is not changing. So the language that covers the wardens is not in red, but it is in the black paragraph B above. Lay delegates to the convention shall be the wardens and elected delegates chosen by the communicants of the congregation from their own number. So the wardens are right up there.
Thank you. Hunter, I see your hand is raised.
Good evening. I actually think that the easiest way to solve the issue that Carter has voiced for us is to simply add the word elected lay delegates shall be apportioned, et cetera, et cetera. I think that clarifies what the red text is addressing, without any significant change to the resolution.
we can queue up someone to have that clarification at the microphone at convention. Thank you, Hunter. And Carter. Other comments, questions, concerns? All right.
So moving on, our next resolution, we're into sort of normal resolutions at this point in the conversation. And yeah, thank you, Laurel. So the first one that we're looking at is Resolution 2025.02, Companion Relationship with Upper Southern Nyanza. So basically a starting of a longer process that involves Anglican Communion partners and people with the Anglican Communion Partnership team here within the Episcopal Church to formalize and do a series of learning events to create a meaningful Christ-centered relationship between our diocese and the Diocese of Upper Southern Nyanza in Kisii in Kenya. And so basically the way that this works for these type of arrangements is that we endorse the formation and then we then reach out to the Standing Commission on World Mission to empower us setting this up and doing it well. And this is based upon the ongoing relationship that we have had with Kisii, which began at the Lambeth Conference in 2022. So if Ann Ellsworth is wanting to speak more to this resolution, she may. I can also sort of take off my my resolution chair hat for a few minutes and also speak to this as a person who is sponsoring it, having been on the pilgrimage and having been in conversation with one of their college chaplains earlier today as we were coordinating some joint ministry ventures.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to it. I'm also happy to take questions if there are any off the top. But I think the intention of this resolution is to sort of solidify and articulate clearly our support of the Upper Diocese of Kisii and to Bishop John as well. So the relationship has been humming along in a very happy and intentional way. And this would just sort of fortify what our intentions are to continue as a companion diocese, receiving Bishop John and his delegates here to share our diocesan life with him, and then also to continue to send pilgrims to Bishop John's diocese. And Ben, I'm happy to hand it off to you if you have anything to add to that, or we can field questions.
Let's field questions if there are any. The next resolution, 2025.03, Native Ministries Covenant Relationship. So this is coming from our Council for Native American Ministries. And what this resolution does is it starts by naming work that we have been doing to the work we've been doing in the diocese around Native American ministries, Indigenous ministries for quite some time. Specifically bringing us to how are we going to orient ourselves further and more deeply and meaningfully into a path of reconciliatory relationships with our Indigenous members and neighbors and communities here in Arizona. And a path forward for this has been to partner with and come into a covenant relationship with the Coalition for the Dismantling of the Doctrine of Discovery. And so what is here is basically a statement of we as a diocese are willing to enter into and empower the bishop and the council to enter into this covenant relationship for 1 year's time. And at that point, under the discretion of the bishop, we will see if that has been working, if that has been a fruitful relationship for us to have. And then it can be renewed moving forward under the bishop's discretion in consultation with the Council for Native American Ministry. And the largest portion of that explanation is simply the text of the covenant itself, which has been worked out between the Native Ministry Council and the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. I believe Monica Whitaker, another one of the sponsors of this of this resolution would like to speak or clarify anything about it? Oh, Beth Hatcher, please speak to the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Couple things I'd like to point out, if I may. In this resolution, there are, I'm reading the bottom, so yep. There are two really action items in addition to going into relationship in a covenant relationship with the coalition, is that this is about action. And in the first, be it resolved, you'll see that the charges from prior conventions enter into restorative relationships to foster justice. And I'll give you two brief examples in a minute. On the next page, again, the action. What are we going to do? We are going to follow Indigenous leadership. I'm not going to read that comment, but those are action items. So the two examples I'll share with you very quickly are Oak Flat. You may be familiar with Oak Flat. And the San Carlos Apache are trying to prevent Oak Flat from being destroyed by Resolution Copper, an international firm. This has been in the courts for some years. So through the partnership with the coalition already this year, they have sent people down to Arizona to be amongst the Apache people in their prayer runs, in the court when they have gone to district court, as well as council members participating. So that's one thing. The Apache people are trying. This is a religious freedom fight for them, in addition to what this will do to their land. The second example I can give you is where we can help the larger scheme of things, the coalition. So there's a tribe in off of Long Island, and they live right next door to the folks in Southampton, and we all know that those people are wealthy. The Shinnecock tribe fishes and obtains food from the waters there. Well, those waters are polluted because the folks in Southampton have their sewage system, I'm drawing a blank on the word. Anyway, it is seeping into the water, polluting their waters. So in the last roundtable meeting, the coalition is asking for any of us in the United States, if we know folks, if we have church Episcopal people that live on Long Island and can join the coalition or partner with the Shinnecock for the tribe to receive justice, really, in clean water. So that's how we work together in a bigger scheme than just the Council for Native American Ministry. It allows us the strength of numbers, essentially. And as you're seeing on the screen, it's laid out in pretty detailed manner what we intend to do. We receive education from the coalition. It's a fantastic group, really.
Beth, can you give just a little bit more clarification on specifically who the coalition is, and sort of because that was one request of a question from the group.
Okay, the coalition is they have two leaders. These women, it was founded through the Mennonite Church years ago. And Sarah Augustine is the woman she is a Tewa woman. She has visited the Council for Native American Ministry last year when on one of our, again, I'm sorry, guys, I've been traveling and I am just drawing a blank on the boarding school. And so that's Sarah Augustine. The other woman is Sherry Hostetler. These are the two co-founders. Both of these women have involved themselves internationally. And again, they're seeking justice for Indigenous people all over the world. So the coalition, what they're trying to do, when we say dismantle the doctrine of discovery, we're talking about the legal system. We're talking about practices in our country. The first papal bull that the doctrine of discovery comes from is almost 575 years old. Well, this is an old history. It's current history that that negatively impacts Native Americans. So that's the work of the coalition.
More about the coalition for the dismantling of the doctrine of discovery. I have put the link in the chat so you can visit their website.
And can I just say one more thing? I don't know if everyone knows what the doctrine of discovery was. I have to say that in all of my education, I didn't. And I was a teacher. I didn't know this, so I didn't teach it. And it's very important, as I just said, because it's not ancient practice. It's not old practice. There's Supreme Court decisions based on this. And again, they affect the Native American people negatively. So that's the work.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Our final resolution that has been published as we're going back to old business and the amendment of the Constitution. So this is Resolution 2024.4, amended Article 5, Section 9, the second reading. And this will change the quorum of the convention to be one half the clergy entitled to vote and lay representatives from at least 1/3 of the parishes and missions entitled to representation in the convention shall constitute a quorum for the transaction of business. And again, just pointing out the reason why we're doing this as the last resolution is so that we do not change the quorum that we are required to have for diocesan convention mid-meeting. Can Erica or Brother David like to speak to this resolution for reasons of why we're doing this?
Dave Hedges, St. Michael's, Tucson, no thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions about this resolution? We did sort of debrief it last year. It would just, I mean, it'd be a matter of a procedural. We would have to stop, recertify the convention, and then fast forward through some various sort of processes of the convention, because the quorum comes before everything else we've done. This is in response to Tim Hyland's conversation in the chat. Sorry, I should have read the question.
Are there any more questions about the constitutional amendment? It's good to, 1/3 of congregations rather than 1/4 of congregations sounds about right. Like, I don't think 1/4 of our congregation should be making any big decisions for our diocese. There should be more of us. There's a question about whether responding to Tim and Holly's comments in the chat about reducing the voice of the laity in convention by the proposed canonical change. I would offer to, are there any clergy or lay delegates who'd like to speak to that? Because I pretty frequently hear from folks who are struggling to recruit lay delegates or struggling to afford things. So would love to see if there is wisdom within the room on that.
Dave Hedges, Tucson, may be recognized.
Sure.
There's that issue. The other thing that we ought to think about is, and I believe, Bishop, that you and Serena have some wonderful data on this, the number of congregations that currently have more than 3 elected lay delegates. because it's a very small number. And so capping elected lay delegates at 3 would not result in disenfranchising delegates from the largest congregations because there are so few of them. I mean, there would be a smaller number, but that's sort of not where the math is.
I think the math is in, obviously the small congregations have the same delegation that we switched from last year. Last year, the small congregations lost one. This time the losses come from the medium and larger size ones, because it sounded like last year that people were concerned about representation of small congregations. The motivation for this is twofold. Again, to have convention be accessible because it's held in a church. Those of you who were at St. Philip's in the Hills last year, we didn't quite fit there. But we will fit in All Saints because All Saints has a gym, and so we can do that. And we only have about a third of our congregations last year didn't send their full lay delegation. And when we asked about why that was in the survey, the answer was we couldn't afford it, and we had trouble recruiting delegates. So the formula we have now means that there's always a good substantial group of people who don't fill their lay delegations. So we would love to have full delegations from all of our congregations. James.
Thank you. I'm all for people having a voice, and I would like to hear, as been true in every diocese I've been in, more different voices rather than the same voices that speak up at convention. In Michigan, my larger congregation than here had 3 lay delegates, and Michigan is a very boisterous diocese. So the smaller number of lay delegates did not squelch the laity there. And here, St. Peter's Litchfield Park has 7 delegates, which I find, kind of unbelievable. So the quantity of the number of delegates doesn't directly correlate with the quality of the hearing different voices and making good decisions in convention. So I'm very confident that lay people will speak up because they're Episcopalians. And I think that we get to decide whatever we want. If we wanted to spend money to run a stadium, we could just let every congregation send as many lay members as they wanted. So we get to decide what we want to do. But I think this is a rational proposal. I do not think it will have any predictable effect on the hearing the voices of different congregations or different people, because I'm very confident that people who want to speak up will, because they're Episcopalians. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Foster.
So really quick to clarify, the number of lay delegates brought would be at a minimum of 3 based off the junior and senior warden, and then the 1 determined by population, and at a maximum 6, or sorry,
At a
5?
maximum of 5.
5, okay. I think that it's a good resolution just because it gives a more accurate number. I personally know how easy it is to sign up or enroll as a member of something that you're not involved with. I'm still listed as a member of congregations back in Denver that I was involved with. So I think if we're counting it based off of like membership reported in that way, you're giving an unfair number of potential voices or votes to congregations that either have more or less than they should. So
Thanks,
just my
Foster.
2 cents. Thank you.
Pat?
Good morning or evening.
Or good evening.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Evening.
You scared me there for a minute, though.
As it was said, Episcopalians have a way of voicing their opinion, either with you online or discussing anything with you at any other time. I've been at convention since I can recall. We voice our, and St. Mary's, I'm from St. Mary's, and St. Mary's from Phoenix. We're very, very small. We only have a number of folks that we are able to send, regardless of how you address this. People have an opportunity, Bishop, to converse with you at any time. They can talk to you anytime. You're very open. They can express their opinion to you at any time. You're the most open bishop I've ever had the privilege of knowing. So one way or the other, they're going to be able to let you know exactly how they feel. Fix this. Fix it.
Well, thank you, Pat. And I appreciate being known for accessibility, even as I'm a little bit afraid of, now that you've said that, what's going to happen.
You're going to fix it, and I have no doubt in my mind.
Thank you, Pat.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or responses? Oh, we have a hand up, but I can't see. Oh, it's still Pat's hand up. Okay. Sorry, I'm flipping back between screens and screens. All right, well, we are finished with 15 minutes to spare. May that be indicative of how we get through the business of convention a week next, not next weekend, but the weekend after. I'm going to close this off with a prayer and I meant to say this before the opening prayer, but I'll say it now. I'm conscious of the attack on the synagogue in England this morning on Yom Kippur, and so want to be particularly solicitous of our Jewish siblings for their suffering on the holiest day of their year. And we'll also pray for all of us in our conflict. So God be with you. Let us pray. O God, you have bound us together in a common life. Help us in the midst of our struggles for justice and truth to confront one another without hatred or bitterness, and to work together with mutual forbearance and respect. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, good night. See many of you on Tuesday at 6:30 for the next part of this, when we will have all of our nominees at the forum, and then see you at convention after that, and sleep well.